Jets, I hear them say it now.
Jets, white, green, just green and white. Tell me, have you ever seen a team take flight? Super Bowl dreams are still in sight. All we gotta do is win tonight. White, green, just green and white. Tell me, have you ever seen a team take flight? Super Bowl dreams are still in sight. All we gotta do is win.
What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back for another video. As always, Joe Scurto, your host here. Before we get into the video, please subscribe to the channel if you have not already liked the video. If you've actually liked it, and you could follow me on social media platforms such as Instagram and on X at Turn Up the Jets. All one word. It is draft season, baby. 6 days away. We are Mark Sanchez, the GOAT, days away from the NFL draft for the 2024 season. I have not touched upon the NFL draft at all this year, which is kind of very out of character for me, but it's been more behind the scenes. I mean, I've had my face glued to everyone's draft boards from all these different analysts. So I've been very in tuned with the draft, just have not made any content. So figured I would make a video here, kind of just giving my opinions on the first round scenarios that the Jets have with the 10th overall pick, in which they will have on Thursday. And that is the big round. That is the big night. And then next week, I will also launch my first and only mock draft. I will do that live. I did it last year as well, but I also made like 50 mock drafts last year. This year, this is just going to be my first and only. It's going to be live. So, you know, I'm not going to edit it, whatever. It's just going to be organic. So excited to do that as well. But we have a lot of scenarios here for the Jets and a lot of fan opinions for the Jets at pick 10. Do they go offensive lineman? Do they trade back? Do they go pass catcher, tight end, wide receiver? And I know nobody wants to hear the word defense. If the Jets go defense, I think I don't even want to imagine what Jets Nation would look like if the New York Jets did take a defender with the 10th overall in the first round in general. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Hassan Reddick trade kind of put all those potential rumors to bed, and I think their defense is more than set going into the season. Especially they sign Ashton Davis. They kind of have their safety room now set. I would be very shocked if the Jets win defenders. So I think the realistic scenarios are the three I just named. It's offensive lineman, pass catcher, or you trade back or trade up. I mean, that's a scenario that is very realistic as well. Joe Douglas went in front of the media today for the first time since the owners' meetings, kind of really just touching upon what their scenarios look like. And he talked a lot about tight ends. He talked a lot about offensive linemen. He talked a lot about the depths of both of those rooms, in which he still likes. He talked about trading up or down. I think all options are open, and he used the word flexibility. That's exactly what the Jets have going into this draft because of their strong offseason, because they were able to address the offensive line. They get 3 legitimate starters in Moses, Smith, and Simpson. And then you go get Mike Williams because you needed a wide receiver too. So those were the 2 needs that the Jets really were looking at, I would say, all along for this draft. But you address both positions. So now it gives you the flexibility of which one do I want depth at more. Let's just start with, the Jets just not trading up or down. I don't think the Jets are going to trade the pick. I feel like a lot of people do think they are. And a guy, well, I'll get into it if they do trade back. But let's just say the Jets stay at 10. My ADD, man. I was talking about one thing, and then I was talking about another thing. Stick with me. The Jets stay at 10. What do they do? So my scenario here is I think there's 0 chance Joe Alt from Notre Dame is at 10. We all know he's a one-of-a-kind talent. He's a guy that can be a legitimate franchise tackle. He has a lot of he's taken a lot of snaps in his career in Notre Dame. You can compare him to his maybe fellow Notre Dame guy in Quentin Nelson. He's that good. I think he could be a generational franchise type of left tackle. And I actually did see that teams would be willing to actually draft him who don't even need a left tackle and switch him to right tackle because he's that good, he's that valuable, and he'll help your offensive line immensely. I don't think he's going to be there. I think there's zero shot that Joe Alt is there. I think he is a scenario, or a case rather, that you would trade up if Alt is there at 6 or 7. I don't think he's going to get past the Titans, but if he's there with the Giants pick, and let's say the Giants for some reason traded to the 4th and the Cardinals now have the 6th, or just something bizarre, and the Jets were like, screw it, let's trade up and get Joe Alt. But it's not going to happen. I don't think Joe Alt will even have a shot to be there at 10, so I'm not even going to mention him anymore. There's a few scenarios. It's pass catcher. It's offensive line. Like I said, pass catcher, of course, everybody is talking about Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia, just a freak of nature. This is a guy that was in the top 5 conversation, but I think his injuries at the end of last season kind of bounced him out of that conversation. Now he's more of a top 10 to top 15 type of guy, and I think that's a good spot for him because he's a tight end. But you may say he's not just a tight end, and I think you are correct if you do say that. This is a guy who lined up in the slot, the X, the Y, the Z, the tight end. He's even gotten carries as a running back. The dude is a freak of nature, and I would just call him a playmaker. I think his blocking is very underrated. He is still a top 3 blocker as a tight end going to this draft. Even if he was in last year's draft, he would still be a top 3, top 4 blocking tight end. So this isn't a guy who just can't block. And that narrative is not true. Take a look at the statistics. You just kind of it gets overshadowed because he's such a good pass catcher. You would just think this guy can't be a decent blocker too. So that's probably his weakness. Maybe it is, but he's not a bad blocker. He is a very serviceable blocker when you need him to do so, of course, on the running game. But Bowers is the name I've probably seen more than anybody. I know he's the sexy pick. I know a lot of the mock drafters, or whatever you want to call them, analysts, are targeting him and heavily targeting him at 10 for the Jets. I've seen him, in numerous mock drafts. Guys like Peter Schrager and Daniel Jeremiah, who consistently have the most, realistic mock drafts coming out. Like when you compare everyone's mocks or final mocks, some guys make 80 of them, but their final ones are the ones that count. Usually those 2 guys are the ones that are closest to being the most realistic, picks for each individual team. It might be because of their draft knowledge. It might be because of their connections. I think Jeremiah is a little more about their knowledge. Guy worked in the front office. He was a scout. I think he was more of a scout, not front office, whatever. He worked with Joe Douglas as a scout. And then Schrager has a lot of connections over the 32 teams in the league. And I think that's how he's able to put his picks together. And they both have Bowers. I know Mel Kiper, a guy that, a lot of people have different opinions about. Regardless, the dude's been doing it for about 40 seasons. He also had Brock Bowers in a lot of his mock drafts. So Brock Bowers, obviously, they're already the Bauer boys and whatever you call them on Twitter and social media everywhere. I know he's a very popular pick, but the thing is, people are so opposite with the Jets. It's like, my thing is, if the Jets are at 10 and they pick a playmaker or an offensive lineman, I will be happy. That's the thing. And I think this should be a realistic scenario for all Jets fans, and I will give you what I think they should do. But I'm just going through these scenarios first. So Bowers is there. And then another scenario, if you stick with the pass catchers, it's going to be probably the 3rd wide receiver off the board. Are 3 receivers going to go off the board in the top 9? I'm not sure, because the way this goes, if there are actually 4 quarterbacks drafted in the top 9, right now probably the top 5, but realistically the Jets only care the top 9. I think there's an 85% chance that 4 quarterbacks are taken. I don't think JJ McCarthy gets this much hype and drops like a Will Levis. Levis was like a late hype. JJ's hype has been ridiculous the entire draft process. I would be shocked. And also you have to look into, there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. And there's even teams that borderline might not even need a quarterback and have guys like a Daniel Jones or other options that might just say, screw it. I'm going to trade up and get JJ McCarthy or Drake May or Jaden Daniels. You know, the way I see it is 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 9. So then you go 2 receivers at least. That's 6 picks. I think Joe Alt, no shot he gets to the 10th pick. That's 7. So there might be another defender in there. There might be another lineman. There's a shot that there's a receiver, whether it's Neighbors or Odunze. I'm not banking on Odunze or Neighbors. I want to say that Neighbors goes before Odunze. It doesn't matter who I think's better. If I were to pick, I would pick Odunze over Neighbors, to be honest with you. MHJ, Odunze, and Neighbors. I mean, Neighbors and Odunze, it's like tomato, but he's that good. Odunze is just a special talent, and not that Neighbors isn't. I mean, both guys are complete studs. That's despite the fact. But for me, there's still a shot that there's a pass catcher or a wide receiver that gets to 10. I think it's more unrealistic. I think Bowers is the more realistic option in terms of a pass catcher, but that's also an option. So let's just say all these options were open. Odunze or Neighbors, one of them somehow fell to the top, somehow fell out of the top 9 and are on the board at 10. Bowers, and then there's offensive linemen, of course. I'm not counting Joe Alt, but now you got Fatanu out of Washington, Fashanu out of Penn State, and Fuaga out of Oregon State. Say that 10 times in a row, I dare you. Those 3 guys are now going to be the realistic options for the offensive line. I would probably rate it as Alt as 1, Fashanu as 2, Fuaga as 3, maybe, and then Fatanu at 4. That's probably how I would rank them. But for the Jets, I would rank them a little differently. But so those are the realistic options now. So I would more so say that those 4 guys, let's just say Odunze got picked. Those 4 guys are on the board. It's Bowers, Fatanu, Fashanu, and Fuaga. You pick Fashanu out of Penn State. I mean, if Fashanu's at 10, I just think you should. I really do think you pick Fashanu out of Penn State if he's there at 10, because he could play left tackle, he could play right tackle, and then you're going to have the best depth lineman piece in the league. I mean, he doesn't have to start right away. You know how valuable that is? Chances are he's going to have to play. He will play games because offensive linemen, especially Jets ones, they don't typically stay healthy. It's just unrealistic that an offensive line group as a whole stays healthy all year. I mean, Joe Douglas touched upon today. Basically, their entire offensive line room, even the backups, we're talking 3rd, 4th strings, every single one of those guys that are on the active roster right now started at least 1 game last season. So if Fashanu was there, the Jets take him. It's not like this is an all-in year and with Rodgers and you need a guy to make an immediate impact. Not necessarily. I think Fashanu is going to be extremely valuable because if Tyron Smith, God forbid, or Morgan Moses, one of those guys go down, you're not screwed. It's not like, we're screwed. And now we just got to protect Rodgers and hope he doesn't get smoked, right? No, it's okay. Now we get to see our potential franchise tackle to come in to see what he can do and help. And that's an immediate impact to me because there's no shot that their offensive line stays healthy for 17 games. Is Bowers or the Odunze, if he's there, the sexier pick? Hell yeah, way sexier. You just think and dream and kind of drool of the fact that Rodgers is in there with the better offensive lineman. He's got Garrett Wilson. He's got Mike Williams. He's got Brock Bowers. Behind him, he's got Breece Hall. I mean, loaded, right? But Fashanu, low-key, will be more valuable for the Jets, even if you don't think about it, because you think, it's not immediate impact because he's going to be a backup. No, that is not necessarily true. Well, it is, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not, because he will be starting games no matter what. And who knows? He might even outplay some of the veterans and get himself a starting job. Everything is possible here. So I think if Fashanu is there, you take him. I think you absolutely take Fashanu if he's at 10. I don't think he's going to be at 10, though, to be honest with you. I would be surprised if he's at 10. I hope he is. I mean, he's the main guy that I want, just because the main realistic option that I want. But so that's really what I think the Jets should do at 10. But if the Jets draft Bowers, am I going to be pissed off? No. And my thing is, anyone says the Jets don't need Brock Bowers, that is not true. They certainly could use and need Brock Bowers. I mean, it's not like the Jets' weapons, after Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams in terms of the passing game. And yes, I like Conklin and Rucker, but it's not like they're set in stone. I mean, they're the Jets, dude. They haven't been in the playoffs in 13 years. Of course, they need a Brock Bowers. Everybody needs a Brock Bowers if he's as good as advertised. And I really do think he's going to be as good as advertised as long as he could stay healthy. The dude can do everything. He's Mr. Everything. He's arguably one of the more talented players in the entire class. He's that good. And I do think he would have been a top 6-7 pick if he hadn't got injured. I think it kind of slid him back. And then, Neighbors erupted, or Dunze erupted. Now you got suddenly JJ McCarthy, who a guy you thought was going to go top 15, 20. Now might go top 4. You got 4 good quarterbacks. You got 4 quarterbacks, 3 really good receivers, a really good offensive tackle, perhaps 2 really good offensive tackles in Fashanu. And I might have just foreshadowed the top 9 possibly there. But for me, I'm not getting mad if they draft Brock Bowers. I will cheer, and I'll be very happy. And if Fashanu is gone, what do the Jets do now? Do they go Bowers, Fashanu, or Fuaga? See, Fuaga is more of a right tackle. And I would even though I ranked him over Fashanu, just because I think Fashanu is a little more raw, but I like Fashanu as the prospect more, but not at 10. I think the Jets would trade back if they would get to Fashanu. I think Fashanu at 10 would be kind of a reach. I really do. I don't think you get the full value there. And whatever, they reached last year with Will McDonald, but of course, the offensive line, this is more of a positional need. This dude can play guard and tackle. You call him mini AVT. That is just huge value in its own, that he could play both positions. He could play every position besides center realistically. He could play right and left guard, right and left tackle, and that's the guy, just the utility lineman off the bench, just in case somebody gets injured. If I was the Jets, you maybe trade with the Raiders, who's at 11, or Denver at 12, who needs a quarterback, or a dark horse team that really might like Brock Bowers or somebody. But with that, if it was Fuaga, Fashanu, and Bowers, the way I think of it, it gets more difficult now. Because Fashanu, you take Fashanu, and you don't blink if he's there. But it's more of a difficult spot now, because then it's like you want to go best available. And I do think Bowers is the better prospect out of the 3. Do the Jets certainly could use the offensive line. Yes, they need both. That's the thing. But now you have a little more flexibility in terms of maybe getting the best available. Like if the Jets didn't address the offensive line at all, you would have to reach on a Fuaga and a Fashanu. Do I think those guys are top 10 talents? I really don't. I don't view those guys as top 10. I think if you want to pick them, fine. I'm happy with having either one of those guys. And I think Fashanu would be the better fit for the Jets just because of what they need him to do. They didn't get Morgan Moses. I'd be more tempted for Fuaga because he's a legitimate right tackle. Maybe could have some upside at left side, but I really see him as a right tackle just because that's really all we saw him at Oregon State. But Fashanu, he's probably the better fit for the Jets because he doesn't need to start right away, and he's that utility guy, and he has that flexibility and versatility. But if you were telling me that those 2 guys are a better prospect than Brock Bowers, you're fooling yourself. You're wrong. Like that's the way I think. I don't think that's true. I really do think that Brock Bowers is the better prospect. So if Fashanu is gone, I'm very lenient to go Bowers unless they trade back. And if they trade back, I'd be happy because I would like Fashanu or Fuaga. But I really do think you need to see the value in here. If you are going to reach for an offensive lineman, why not trade back a couple picks, still give yourself security that you're guaranteed one of them, and maybe in in the process, you get a second round in which you don't have this year, or you get a second, third rounder. So you kind of make up for not having a second rounder. You get a first, still a top, maybe 12, 13, 14 pick, and you get 2/3 because you do miss out in the second round. Or who knows, some team might be desperate, and maybe somehow JJ McCarthy is there at 10 and the team goes all the way down and trades for JJ McCarthy, like the Vikings, or like the Raiders or the Broncos, as I already mentioned. So that is a possibility. But my thing is, if you're at 10, you take Bowers. If it's Fataanu, Fuaga, or Bowers. Kind of already foreshadowed the, trading up, trading back. Trading up is more interesting. You could trade up for Alt. The Jets could trade up for Dunze. I have no idea. I think there's a better shot of them trading back. And I said it already earlier in the video. I still don't think they're going to trade back or up. I think they're going to keep the pick. So that's kind of what my opinion is. Again, I already said I want Fashanu if he's not there. I want Bowers. I mean, that at 10, like we're talking at 10. And that's just kind of how my brain is processing right now, because I haven't really thought of a whole lot. Like, what are the scenarios going to be? There's going to be a 50 billion different scenarios. It's Fashanu if he's there. It's Bowers if you're going to stay at 10. If not, you trade back, you get some more assets, and you pick Fuaga or Fataanu, and I would prefer Fataanu if it came down to it. Let me know what you think. I know this is just a big shit show of everyone has opinions, and everyone's opinions are valuable at the end of the day, because nobody, me or you, any of these analysts have any idea what is actually going to go down on Thursday night in Detroit. I'll be happy either way. Like I said, as long as they get an offensive lineman or a pass catcher, I don't care. Do I prefer offensive line? Yes. Is my opinion a little skewed because I said I would rather Bowers than both the offensive linemen? It might be, but it's way it's just I have like a way, like it might be too in depth and maybe too like complicated of the way that my brain's thinking, but I tried to make it make sense. Don't know if it made any sense, but that's kind of what's going through my brain. Anyway, my mock draft will be released next week. I'm going to do it over a video, probably be like 30 minutes. Going, just kind of gonna go along with the board. I have no idea how the simulator is working for this class, because like I said, I have not done one yet, and I'm going to wait and not do one. So that is my one and only one. Look out for that video. Definitely will be before the draft, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm not sure what day it will drop, but I will advertise it, of course, on X and on Instagram. Appreciate all the support. Subscribe to the channel, like the video if you've actually liked it. And we'll see you next week for the mock draft, as we are 6 days away from the NFL draft. See ya.
Jets, I hear them say it now. Jets, white, green, just green and white. Tell me, have you ever seen a team take flight? Super